The following episode recounts the details of a real homicide investigation. All information presented is taken from public court records, law enforcement files, and direct investigative experience. The names of the victims and individuals involved are sometimes changed, but are always used with the utmost respect, and no part of this story is intended to exploit or sensationalize their suffering. As a retired homicide investigator, I believe these stories matter to honor the victims, to understand the truth, and to bring closure to the families left behind. Some content may be disturbing to listeners. Discretion is strongly advised. Greetings. I'm Detective Sergeant First Class Harry Gavel, retired homicide detective from the Camden County Prosecutor's Office Homicide Division. I spent my last 11 years of a 28-year career in the Homicide Division at the Prosecutor's Office. Before getting to the Homicide Division, I worked several units within the office, including organized crime, undercover narcotics, major crimes, career criminal, juvenile, and case preparation units. Before that, I was a policeman in Runnymede, New Jersey, and spent 12 years in the patrol division, part-time detective, and elevated to acting sergeant. While in the organized crime unit, I was deputized as a special United States Marshal deputy, where I spent time out of country investigating crime. This case I call Cruelty of the Axe. It's a story of two murdered women and a raped juvenile. The person responsible is a person by the name of Charles Reddish, a.k.a. Crazy Eddie, the Axe Murderer. He's currently serving time in the New Jersey prison system, and I don't believe he'll ever see daylight again. The first victim is Yeda De De Rosenthal. White female, beautiful young, 31-year-old Canadian national. Her date of birth was November the 4th, 1958. Her date of death was February the 23rd, 1991. It all started on February the 22nd of that same year, 1991. Charles Reddish, a.k.a. Crazy Eddie, was working as a maintenance man at the Somerset Towers Apartments located in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Cherry Hill, New Jersey was an affluent, quiet area, almost like a bedroom community, but it had a bustling, robust economy, good solid area, fully staffed police department, had everything going for it: peace, quiet, and tranquility. Up until this day, at least, when the Axeman raised or reared his ugly head. Reddish had been partying with a bunch of other crackheads of one of the residents who also lived at the Somerset Towers Apartments. This party went on to the wee hours of the morning until Reddish decided to go back to the apartment where he was staying with his then girlfriend, Rebecca Works. Once there, it is said that they had some type of a small argument or disagreement because that wasn't enough for him. He wanted to go out again. Rebecca, who had her 10-year-old daughter then living with her at that apartment, didn't realize it yet, but Crazy Eddie had something devious on his mind, something heinous. He had been thinking and fantasizing about a female who lived in the apartment complex who he had ideas about, sexual ideas. He had been trying to get her attention by talking to her, arranging to bump into her. He tried several ways to become her friend and engage in a conversation with her. Dee Dee, by all accounts, did not appear interested in him. She was dating another man who also lived and worked at the Somerset County Apartments by the name of John Bristol. On this night, Reddish decided that he was going to go to the apartment of Yeda De De Rosenthal for the purpose of having sex with her. Now, he had a key to access the roof area of the apartment complex. Yeda De De Rosenthal's apartment was on an elevated floor, so he had to gain access to the roof and then lower himself down, drop himself onto her small balcony, and enter by way of her sliding glass doors, which happened to be unlocked on this particular night or morning in question. It was now approximately 2 a.m. Silence was in the air. He moved slowly and meticulously as he could, but being in an induced cocaine stupor, he was thinking exactly like the madman that he was. It is believed by this investigator, since Reddish had been familiar with the inside of Rosenthal's apartment. After all, he was a maintenance man, and he had been inside of her apartment on many other occasions for excuses about maintenance problems and so forth. Again, trying to ingratiate himself with Dee Dee, who would, for all intent and purposes, want no part of him. Dee Dee worked at the Elwyn Institute in Vineland, New Jersey. There, she trained staff to work with autistic children. On Friday, February the 22nd, 1991, while on her way home from work, she stopped at an ATM machine, and at precisely 4:47 p.m., she withdrew $80 cash from the ATM machine. Later that evening, police would learn that she had spoken to John Bristol. John Bristol and Dee Dee were lightly dating at the time, and as I stated earlier, both lived in the same apartment complex. This was early the next morning on February the 23rd, 1991, shortly after 2 a.m., while Dee Dee was fast asleep in her bed. Crazy Eddie was about to spring his diabolical plan. He had accessed her apartment with ease. He was searching the apartment, trying to be as quiet and sneaky as he could, searching for valuables, just like the cocaine crack addict that he was. Being in a cocaine-induced frenzy, apparently he wasn't being as quiet as he thought he was after surreptitiously slithering into her apartment by way of that unlocked sliding door. He didn't recall when I interviewed him if he had purposefully left those sliding glass doors unlocked on one of his previous visits on the inside of her apartment. Although this investigator wholeheartedly believed that he had. He was planning this. I don't believe he planned to kill her in his initial plan. Somehow he thought that he could have sex with this woman and it would be fine. It would be unreported. It would be a romantic encounter that he would have with Miss Rosenthal after he robbed her apartment. As he creeped his way closer to her master bedroom, where Dee Dee was fast asleep in her bed, she was startled. She awakes. She sees and knows it's Eddie, the maintenance man, standing in her bedroom in the middle of the night. She pulls the covers quickly over her head, drawing her knees up to her chest in a defensive posture. As she begins to let out a scream, Reddish immediately panics. He knows she can ID him. He cups his hands to her mouth as he dives on top of her. She begins to struggle. He beats her in the head. In his drug-crazed frenzy of desperation to silence her, he strangles her to death. Once he feels her body go limp and notices and realizes that she had just taken her last breath, he now realizes she is in fact dead. Then he pulls the covers back over from covering her body and decides to rape her deceased corpse right there in her bed in her own bedroom. When he completes his vicious and ugly deed, he prepares to vacate her apartment. But before he does so, he finds the $80 in cash right out in the open on top of one of her end tables. Also there are the keys to her car, which is a white Prelude sitting out in the parking lot, her purse, and a bank receipt for the $80 that he failed to take. Wouldn't have mattered. We would have realized the withdrawal at a later date anyway. He leaves her car keys and purse intact, exits her apartment, and is sure to leave the front door now unlocked, as he may have designs on returning to the scene of the crime again. He returns back to his girlfriend Rebecca's apartment, climbs in bed with her, and has a conversation with her, at which time he explains to her that he actually broke into the apartment of Yeda De De Rosenthal, stole $80 in cash, and he had to kill her and left her dead body in the apartment. Sunday, February the 24th came around. Of course, then came Monday, February the 25th, and Tuesday, February the 26th. Dee Dee had not shown up for work. There was no called in sick or any type of notification received at the Institute explaining her absence from work. Her co-workers were aware that there were no prior unexplained absences from work during her previous 6 months of employment at the Institute. Two co-workers then become very concerned. On Wednesday, February the 27th, they place a phone call to the Cherry Hill Police Department and report to them that they would like to report a missing person and file a missing persons report. The Uniform Police Patrol Division gets the call to check on the well-being of Dee Dee Rosenthal, and her address is supplied to them. Two uniformed officers of the Cherry Hill Police Department respond to her apartment to investigate that very report. Their first observation was right at the front door of Dee Dee's apartment. They noticed that her scheduled delivery of newspapers had been accumulating and collecting outside of her front door. As they tried the door, after knocking, they found that her front door was not locked. They opened the door, they hollered inside, announcing that they were the police, asking, "Anyone home? Hello? Cherry Hill Police." Only a haunting dead silence could be heard. Nothing. No response. As they made their way further into the apartment, they could see that the apartment appeared to be neat and orderly. No signs of any forced entry, no sign of a struggle. The rear sliding doors were found to be closed, but also unlocked. In her master bedroom, the bed appeared to be partially made up. They noticed that a sheet was missing, but orderly. Her purse and car keys were there on the table. A bank withdrawal slip was intact. Her purse was located in the bedroom. Inside the purse, they found her identification, her driver's license. Everything seemed to be normal. But where was Dee Dee? They noted that the temperature in the apartment was normal. The closets were orderly and full of clothes. There were no strange smells or odors noted. Her luggage, her personal appointment booklets were all found where you would expect them to be. An examination of her appointment book did not reveal any type of engagements or appointments for the time frame of concern. A wider search was conducted. Additional officers were summoned to the apartment, where an in-depth canvass of the area was conducted. Her white vehicle was located on the parking lot. Her vehicle contained her briefcase and a raincoat. Her cat was located crying out on the small balcony of her apartment. Over the next several hours and days, a subsequent search of the entire apartment complex was conducted. A thorough canvass was resumed with focus on person or persons that were not home during the original canvass. Trained canine search dogs were brought in. These were not just any dogs. These were highly trained cadaver dogs, especially trained to detect the scent of a decaying body or the decomposition of one. These dogs were used to search every storage space, every confined area on the outside premises of the Somerset Towers apartments. A list of all the employees that worked at the Somerset Towers apartments was reviewed by the police. Those persons were identified. They were brought in for questioning and questioned by the Cherry Hill detectives who were instrumental in this case. This case actually received a full confession of 2 murders and a rape of a 14-year-old daughter of one of Crazy Eddie's victims. The Cherry Hill detectives were investigating the circumstances surrounding the disappearance of Yeda De De Rosenthal, who was listed now at this time as a missing person. During that investigation, they interviewed the person that was responsible for her disappearance, a one Charles Reddish, a.k.a. Crazy Eddie, and while they were interviewing him, they received his confessions. They were actually there interviewing him on the murder of his then girlfriend, Rebecca Works. That interview was conducted at the Burlington County Jail, where Reddish was being held on that murder. As part of the process of the investigations going on at the onset of the missing person of Yeda De De Rosenthal, John Bristol, who had been lightly dating Yeda De De Rosenthal, had stated that he had last spoken to her on Friday evening at approximately 10 p.m. in February of 1991. He could not add anything further of pertinent or evidential value. That interview was terminated. The police also interviewed at that time Charles Reddish, a.k.a. Crazy Eddie. During that interview, Reddish denied any and all knowledge of Rosenthal's whereabouts. All of her contacts found in her personal papers were contacted. No one had heard from Yeda De since February the 22nd of 1991. It was a complete and total mystery. Police had their suspicions, but no proofs. It was as if she vanished into thin air from the face of the earth. Detectives were getting involved. Airlines were contacted and checked. No flights contracted in her name. Train stations were notified, both in New Jersey and Philadelphia. Bus depots were notified. Ticket searches were conducted. Bank transactions were investigated. During those searches, false hope arrived. Detectives learned that there was, in fact, a bank transition on Yeda De De Rosenthal's account on March the 1st, 1991. The police later were able to discount that, and they determined that it was, in fact, a prearranged, automated transaction, much to their chagrin. Yeda De De Rosenthal was a Canadian national. Her half-brother, Blaine Rosenthal, was trying desperately, along with his family, to locate his stepsister. Blaine had depleted his entire life savings in trying to locate Yeda De. It was spent on private detectives and a host of other means, all which met in negative results. On June the 12th, 1992, Reddish is picked up on another charge, unrelated to the disappearance of Yeda De De Rosenthal, but nonetheless, Cherry Hill detectives immediately, again, questioned him in detail about any knowledge that he might have concerning the disappearance of Yeda De De Rosenthal in February of 1991. He denied any knowledge of the disappearance or the whereabouts of our victim. Rosenthal's family had been successful in getting the case aired on Unsolved Mysteries. It was aired 6 times between April of 1993 and 1995. Again, all to no avail. No new leads were generated. I became involved in the case, and our office, the Camden County Prosecutor's Office, was alerted when on October the 6th, 1995, the local news stations had reported that Charles Reddish, a.k.a. Crazy Eddie, had axe-murdered his girlfriend, Rebecca Works, in his home on Crestwood Drive in Burlington County. Let me repeat that. he had axe murdered his girlfriend, Rebecca Wirtz, in his home in Burlington County, New Jersey. Now, that was not in the jurisdiction of Camden County, but when the Cherry Hill detectives got wind of that arrest, they wasted no time in going to the Burlington County Jail to interview the Axeman. You all know what was on their mind. What did you do with Yeda De De Rosenthal? First, he laid out the entire story and facts of the case about how he was having an argument with his girlfriend, Rebecca, in his home. At the time, her 14-year-old daughter was there with her. Reddish made her daughter sit in a chair in the living room while he commenced to beat her mother, and then took an axe to her head and slaughtered her right there on the couch in front of her then 14-year-old child. This wasn't horrific enough. He then kept the 14-year-old juvenile hostage for the next several hours, where he tormented and raped her repeatedly. The child somehow, without losing her mind completely, continuously talking to Reddish, begging him to call the police, to turn himself in. He finally does just that. The police are called. Charles Reddish and the young 14-year-old go outside of the house while the mother lied dead and bleeding on a living room couch. They sit on the front steps of the property as they await the police to pull up and observe this horrific crime and be told of the atrocities that went on inside of that house. Reddish is quickly placed in handcuffs, put into the police cruiser, and taken eventually to the Burlington County Jail. The young child is taken into protective custody, where family is notified and a determination is made to have her interviewed by the Division of Youth and Family Services and provide medical care to her as was quite necessary and appropriately required, given what she had gone through. The Cherry Hill detectives, while questioning Reddish at the Burlington County Jail, then begin their questioning of him with respect to the missing person, Yeda De De Rosenthal, from the Somerset Towers apartments in their jurisdiction, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Reddish cleanses his soul of his actions on February the 22nd, 1991. After breaking into her home and killing her, as I explained earlier, a few days go by, 2 to 3 days. Reddish returns to the scene of the crime. He notices that out front of her apartment, her newspapers had begun to pile up. He had returned to her apartment with a very specific purpose in mind. He needed to get rid of the body. He came prepared. He brought with him a discarded shopping cart that was used around the property for various work details. He had with him a large painter's tarp, a canvas drop cloth, in other words. And he also had with him a diabolical plan. With the assistance of a bedsheet that was on the bed of Dee Dee, he places her dead body into the shopping cart, covers her with the bedsheet and the painter's tarp. Leaving her front door unlocked, he wheels her into an elevator down to the first floor. He then wheels her out to his girlfriend's station wagon, which was parked in the parking lot, and drives from the Somerset Towers apartment complex in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, to Pedricktown, New Jersey, landfill, which was located in Salem County, some 35 to 40 plus miles away from where he killed her. There he drives up into a wooded area where he encounters a car parked in the darkness. This car contained two lovers, a pair of people who didn't seem to care what he was doing. He got past them and chooses a spot to dump Dee Dee's body. This spot consisted of approximately 6-foot tall weeds, very heavily weeded. He then drops the body in the area, leaving there the blanket but taking the painter's cloth with him, gets back into Rebecca Wirtz's vehicle, and drives back to the Somerset Towers apartments in Cherry Hill. Now, of course, the Camden County Prosecutor's Office Homicide Division was notified immediately upon the obtained confession of Charles Reddish by the Cherry Hill detectives. I was assigned the case, and our task was now to attempt to make every effort possible to understand the circumstances surrounding Yeda De De Rosenthal's disappearance and locate her still missing body. It had almost been 5 years now when I got involved in the case. A Camden County assistant prosecutor by the name of Mary Allison Albright was assigned this investigation, and she would be charged with prosecuting this case without having a body present. So the importance of locating a body was paramount in this investigation. It has either never or very rarely been done where a case in New Jersey was successfully prosecuted for homicide without having a body. Mary Allison Albright had her work cut out for her, but she was no mere neophyte either. She donned her baseball cap, her long blue jeans, and her swamp boots. With a stick in one hand and a rake in the other hand, she was right out there with us every day, searching and probing for the remains of Yeda De De Rosenthal. During my time involved with Reddish, we became aware that it was possible that he was hiding out in a campsite on a wooded property in back of a relative's house not long after the murder. I had reason to believe and did speculate that he may have kept Yeda De De Rosenthal's body at this campsite for a period of time before he discarded her remains. I would not and could not rule out the possibility that Charles Reddish, a.k.a. Crazy Eddie, would abuse a corpse. We spent several days returning to the area, combing the vast wastelands, using every possible resource we could think of. In that search, we deployed several members of the law enforcement community, including outside assistance with a ground-penetrating mobile radar machine. All efforts met with negative results. It was truly one of the most exhaustive, organized hunts for a deceased person that I had ever been engaged in. There was a huge effort put forth. Many people involved in this case deserve recognition. Assistant Prosecutor Chief of the Homicide Division, James Jim Conley, Esquire, Camden County Prosecutor's Office, retired, sought bail for Reddish in the De De Rosenthal matter, initially asking the court and did receive $500,000 bail. It was later increased to $750,000. Of course, next would be Captain Retired William Waitman, Camden County Sheriff's Department. He was assigned with me to initiate the initial searches and hunt for Dee Dee's body. He was there every day. Willie Mahan was also assigned. All three of us, including Mary Allison, were there with the ground-penetrating radar, searching futilely for a body that we would never find. The Cherry Hill Police Department is credited with obtaining the confession of Charles Reddish, Crazy Eddie the Axeman, for the brutal axe murder of Rebecca Wirtz and the homicide of Yeda De De Rosenthal, who was still missing to this day. At some point, Assistant Prosecutor Mary Allison Albright and I were tasked to go to New York and do a filming of On the Case with Paul Lazan, which outlined the investigation of the hunt for Yeda De De Rosenthal's body after her brutal murder. That was titled A Mystery in Cherry Hill, labeled as episode 615. If you get a chance, try to find it on the Discovery Channel. Quite intriguing. My special thanks goes out to everyone involved in this case, including the stepbrother of Yeda De Rosenthal, Blaine Rosenthal. His relentless pursuit and never giving up on his stepsister and being the spokesman for the family spoke volumes of his dedication to his stepsister and her memory. A memorial was held dedicated to Yeda De De Rosenthal. If her body is ever found, they comment that they would have a private burial service for her. I hope that someday that would come to fruition, and as a detective, the case will never be closed for the family, nor any of the people responsible for trying to help bring Yeda De home. The end. I'm Detective Sergeant First Class Harry Gavel, Camden County Prosecutor's Office, Homicide Division, retired. See you next time for another case from the murder capital of the nation.